I asked my leader a question yesterday, and their response was, "I'm sorry, I don't know what you're asking me." That is a quote from one of my beautiful clients who I worked with yesterday. And she said to me, "Jacqui, I've just realized that I actually have such a long way to go in terms of my communication skills and how I communicate to people around me." This is a wonderful client. All of my clients are wonderful. And this person is a senior leader, very experienced. And actually, I would suggest that their communication is one of their leadership strengths. However, they had asked this question of their leader, who they'd worked with for quite a while, and their leader was like, "What are you trying to ask me?" And so I wasn't planning on recording a podcast today. So if you're one of these people like me who likes to watch a podcast and you're seeing my get up today, look, apologies, podcasts are for audio. I'm not looking my best. However, this information is just so important and can be so helpful that it is worth just, getting over my admin day appearance. I'd like to take you through a little bit of a process or offer you some structure around how you can start to tweak and hone your communication style so that it is more resonant for the listener or the recipient, and so that you can be more clear, more concise, and more effective in how you're communicating. So this is really a 3-step process with some sub-steps in between. We want to start with our intention and setting our objective. One of the greatest obstacles we see in effective communication is people starting to communicate without actually figuring out where they're going and what their goal is. So we'll talk through that in a moment. Then when we're actually in that communication, we can tweak and hone the language that we're using, the style that we're communicating, and also the hierarchy or the order of information that we're delivering so that it lands better for the audience and helps us all to achieve our objectives more effectively. And then the third step is around summarizing, wrapping it up, making sure that everyone who is involved in that communication piece understands what we need them to understand. So have we actually achieved the objective that we set? And reflecting back on, how was I? Did I appeal to my audience? What did I do really well? What can I do better? Because reflection is where the learning happens. So let's go through those stages one at a time. This is going to be super quick, and I really encourage you to start to notice how you communicate with the people around you, whether it's family, friends, stakeholders, your leader, your team members. Start to notice how effective you are in your communication, because I hear all the time, "I was very clear with what I needed from this person," or "I was very clear with what the project was," or "I was really clear about my feedback." And 9 times out of 10, when I challenge that statement with, "How do you know you were clear?" it's in the eye of the communicator, not in the eye of the audience. So we may feel we're being clear because our natural inclination is to communicate in a way that resonates for us. But if we're not validating that the person we're speaking to gets what we're saying, then we do not know whether we have been as clear as we could be. So let's start at the beginning, where we want to figure out what our goal is. Why are we having this interaction? What is your objective? What is your goal? Why are you having this communication / this meeting? It may be that you need to impart information to someone else. It may be that you need to receive information. You may need to influence the other person in the meeting. You may need them to make a decision, for example, or approve something, or get on board with something and advocate. Whatever the goal is, actually make it overt and identify it. Before you go into that interaction, figure out what your objectives are. but also have a think about what their objectives might be, because that's going to help you get in the right frame of mind and plan how you're going to communicate most effectively. I also suggest, either if you don't have any clue what they want to get out of the time, or if you have an idea, I'd still suggest that you validate that. So starting each meeting with, before we dive in, I'd really like to just get clear on what everyone would like to achieve in this time together. We have a 60-minute meeting set aside. What would you all like to cover off or get within that 60 minutes? So making sure that we're identifying what everyone else's need state is, then contributing your own. Great. What I'm hearing is that we want to cover off A, B, and C. I'd also really like to add D to that, because that's going to be a critical element to keep my team's work moving forward. So getting everyone on the same page, making it overt. If someone wants to bring something or has an objective for the meeting that is out of scope of the meeting, calling that out. Yep, I hear that you want to talk about X and Y. I don't think that's within the scope for today's conversation, but let's make sure that we book a follow-up time so that you get the information that you need. So by making sure that everyone is on the same page before you start talking, you're actually going to increase everyone's capability or capacity to listen to everything that's being spoken. What do I mean by that? If I go into a meeting and I just need one decision on one critical project that I'm working on, do you think that I'm going to have the bandwidth to even think about the other 5 items on the agenda? I am singly focused. My brain is filtering all of the other information, waiting for that one decision that I really need. Whereas if we call that out up front, if I'm able to say, hey, I'm here because I need that one decision, then when it's validated and everyone says, yes, we definitely will get to that, that's on the agenda, that is within scope for this meeting, I can let my guard down and loosen my filter and allow other information in. So get everyone on the same page, figure out what everyone's objective is. The other benefit of doing that is when the scope of the meeting inevitably starts to creep and someone wants to bring in something else that hasn't been flagged up front, then you're more able to say, oh, I just want to stop you there. I'm noticing that the conversation is moving off the agenda that we'd set at the beginning, and I just want to check in. Is this something that we want to add to the agenda? Are we happy to bump something else off because we're likely to run out of time? Or shall we park this one and talk about it at another time? So we're wanting to make sure that everyone who is involved in the meeting has the opportunity or agreement on what's being spoken about. So that's step 1. Then we actually have to do the communicating. Now, because we have spent time ahead of the meeting thinking about what we need out of that time, and then when we've started the meeting, we've figured out what everyone else needs from that time, we will then be able to create a hierarchy in terms of how we deliver our component of the meeting. If someone says, what I really need from this time is for you to let me know status update on A, B, and C so that I can feed that back to my team and we can keep moving forward. If you're wanting to influence the other people in the team or in the meeting, then you can order the way that you're delivering your information in alignment with what's important to them, because then they're going to feel really heard by you and they're going to be more on board to listen to what you need from them. In addition to creating a hierarchy of communication and communicating what's important to that person in terms of their outcomes or their objectives from the meeting, we can also do the same by connecting with their why. That means identifying why that person works in this organization, why do they get up out of bed, what is important to them, and allowing that to flavor how you communicate. For example, if you're speaking to the leader of another team and you know about them that they are raging advocates for their team. They want everyone to see how effective and how excellent their team are. Their reputation is incredibly important. They're trying to increase the presence that their team has in the organization. That is their why. That's what's important to them. And so you can tailor how you're communicating to appeal to that. So creating a hierarchy of information connecting with their why. Similarly, use their language. If you are trying to influence someone, if you're trying to get a decision, an agreement on something, a go, no go, budget approval, whatever it is, speak in a language that they understand. And how do you know what that language is? That's how they speak to you. So if you are speaking to the CFO and they talk in data or data, if they are always talking figures, metrics, quantitative information, then that is a really good indicator that that's how they like to be communicated to. So lead your communication with data, include statistics, include facts. Maybe deprioritize the storytelling or the human impact, because that might be a more secondary driver or language for them. So we want to be speaking to them in a way that is comfortable and resonant for them. For me, for example, yes, I absolutely love data, but most of all, I love how that data relates to the human experience. So making myself vulnerable here, but if you ever want to influence me, talk to me about human outcomes, about human connection and relatedness and belonging. Those are the things that is my why, and also that is my language. And then the third component within this sort of actual communication block is their style. So we've figured out what their why is, and we've created a hierarchy in terms of what we're delivering. We're using their language. We're speaking data-driven if that's their language. We're speaking storytelling if that's their language. And then finally, we want to be incorporating their style. So if someone speaks in quite a staccato, short phrases, quite direct, then that is probably how their brain prefers to receive communication. Now, I'm not suggesting that you kind of parrot them, or this is not like a parody, joking kind of, improv skit. Do it in a way that is authentic to you. So if someone speaks in a more direct manner than you would naturally, when you're setting your intention before the meeting, just have that lens. Okay, when I communicate, I'm going to be short and sharp. I'm going to stop after each of my points and allow for conversation, or at least pause for them to receive information. You might have noticed I am quite I like to use hand gestures. My voice kind of naturally projects, even when I have a microphone. That can be a problem sometimes, but I am pretty verbose. This is my natural style. You're listening to it right now. I like those little asides. I like to make jokes, all of that sort of stuff. But I have worked with people who are almost the opposite of that, who are not verbal processors, they're internal processors. So when they receive information, they need time and silence to think about it. People who speak with their hands in their laps more and don't use a lot of hand gestures, people who are more softly spoken. And so when I'm wanting to have maybe a more challenging conversation with them, maybe when I'm wanting to influence them or to really clearly impart information to them, then I will mirror that style. I'm never going to be someone who is completely gesture free, but I will tone it down. I can be really conscious of my volume as well, and incorporating plenty of silences. So it's really about, I see how that person communicates with me, and I can emulate that somewhat. I can incorporate that into my natural style so that I am going to communicate in a way that is more comfortable for them, that is less challenging. What we don't want is for our audience to be sitting there thinking, my goodness, why is she yelling? Why is she using so many words? And why is she doing some sort of weird voguing choreography with her hands? This is making it distracting from the message. And that's why we want to somewhat mirror someone else's communication style. So we've set the objective. Everyone is very clear on what we're wanting to achieve from this interaction. Then when you are communicating, you are creating a hierarchy of your information that connects with their objectives and also their why. You are using their language and you are mirroring their style. Now, at the end, we want to reflect, and this is something that most of us omit. It seems like a nice to have. Also, I mean, usually we all get to the end of a meeting or the end of a conversation and it's, oh God, I've got to go. I've got to run to the next thing, or, it's always a rush. If you can allow for a few minutes at the end of your meeting time to summarize what has been said, in particular, any key decisions that have been made, any key action items and who they have been allocated to, any progress that's been made. You might even like to incorporate any progress that hasn't been made. This is going to be taken offline. Someone's going to go and have a different conversation and bring that back to the group, whatever it is. So that summary really helps gain clarity in terms of the communication. If you are communicating, if it's almost like a one-way style of communication, perhaps you're a leader and you need to do like a town hall, perhaps you've had some structural changes, something that you need to communicate to a broad group. Still, that adage, it's not an adage, that saying, tell them what you're going to tell them, and then tell them using those 3 critical communication skills, and then tell them what you've told them in a really succinct, clear manner. That's how we're going to get the best comprehension of what we're trying to say. So we want to summarize. You may choose to send an email with that summary. You may choose to have minutes for your meetings if it's a more formal communication. And then separate from that, I always recommend doing a personal reflection, especially if you've identified that communication is something that you'd like to work on or something that you'd like to be better at, or holding meetings or whatever it is. Like I said at the beginning, reflection is where the learning happens. That's where we're really embedding those neural pathways. So trying to have a balanced reflection at the end. What are 2 or 3 things that I did really well in that meeting that I want to hold on to and bring into future conversations? And so that might be, I really nailed their why. I was really happy that we set their objectives. And I think that it resonated for them, the style that I used, for example. And then you might identify a couple of areas that you would like to improve on. Oh, I didn't really create a hierarchy, or maybe I didn't use enough data. It didn't seem to land for them until I brought the data in. So starting to identify those areas for growth and progress and improvement for next time. So that is how you can gain more clarity in your communication style, how you're able to have more influence and impact in any interaction. Yes, I used a meeting as an example, but if your phone rings and you know what the person is calling for, same thing. Or even if you don't, if someone rings you, you might say, what do I need? What do you need from me? Or, what brings you to call me today? And that's your way of identifying what they want to get out of that time. And then you can still go through that process. When they tell you what they need, you might say, oh, yep, no problem. Just give me 1 minute. Let me get my head in the game, because I was just in the middle of something else. So going through that process is going to make you a significantly more effective leader, because if you are a leader who has amazing competence in your field, you are wonderfully visionary, you are strategic, you're doing all of the things, but you're not able to communicate those things, then it's like if a tree falls over in the wood and no one's there to hear it, doesn't make a sound. It's the same thing. If you're an amazing leader but you're not able to communicate, are you an amazing leader? So this is a real critical skill to hone in terms of your leadership. If this was helpful for you, I do a full module on communication and influence in LeadWell Academy. The link is in the caption below. Or feel free to follow me at LeadWell with Jacqui on all of the socials, and I have loads of this stuff that you can access for free. As always, it's been a pleasure to be in your ears today, and I will see you next time.